Welcome to Keto Life Support, where we make your keto life sustainable, fun, and low stress. I'm Kim Howerton, and I'll be coming to you weekly with some of my keto besties to bring you the practical, real-world keto advice that you need. Quick disclaimer, I am not a doctor, and even if we do have a doctor in the house from time to time, he or she is not your doctor, and nothing we say on this show should be taken as medical advice. Always check in with a trusted medical professional about your own personal medical concerns.
Hello, and welcome to Keto Life Support. This is Kim Howerton with episode number 157. And I am going to share today a few thoughts about disordered eating, my experience personally with disordered eating, and a little whoops that I had recently that I think it's important to share about. So, there are different schools of thought. First, I'm just going to say that I'm going to use the term disordered eating. Disordered eating versus an eating disorder. An eating disorder is clinically diagnosed. It has certain criteria, but disordered eating exists on more of a continuum. You might not identify as someone with an eating disorder, but you probably have experienced at some point in your life, if you ever have struggled with your weight, an experience of disordered eating. I'm not saying that only people, there are people who have not struggled with their weight that are still have disordered eating, but usually it's an experience of out of control feelings around food, sort of feeling out of control around food, or exerting an undue amount of control. So some people are restrictors and some people are more bingers. So I'm just going to use the term disordered eating rather than, I actually do have a clinically diagnosed eating disorder at one time, but I want to open it up because I think this applies to more than just sort of the extreme end of the spectrum, but to many of us. So I'm just going to make it a little more all-inclusive and say disordered eating. And so there are kind of different schools of thought of how to deal with disordered eating. And I'm specifically today in this episode, when I refer to disordered eating, I'm going to be talking about either binging or compulsive overeating. Anorexia and bulimia, a little bit different, but I'm specifically going to talk about the tendencies to overeat beyond reason. Okay. And so I myself have struggled with this most of my life, to be honest. And when I found keto, I had the most control over my eating that I've ever had in a way that felt very sort of healthy, not unhealthily controlled, but much more healthily controlled. And a lot of people experience this. And there are a lot of people in the keto community that use abstinence as a concept. So they abstain, just like an alcoholic abstains from alcohol, they abstain from certain types of foods. And usually that would mean like carbohydrates, right? You can't abstain from all foods. You're going to have to pick. So they abstain from what they consider their trigger foods. A trigger food is a food that triggers an event, a disordered eating event. So abstinence is that method they choose. So they know they can't, I think the phrase that's often used is one is too many and all of them are too few, right? It's this kind of like, I can never get enough, so I can't even have one. And so that can very much work at different phases of this experience. And when I first came to keto, that was my method as well. More recently, I've opened up my eating to include some higher carbohydrate foods generally that I've been fine with and have not had experiences that felt disordered around them. I felt a lot more food freedom. I felt a lot healthier about my choices. And I continue to push the envelope. That's not right for everybody. I'm not saying that's right for you because there are things that can happen and you can get really off track. Now, recently, I've sort of made a rule for myself that if I'm going over to somebody's house, I no longer, what I used to do is I would bring my own food or I would check in with them beforehand to make sure that I could eat what they were serving, that it wasn't kind of something that was off my personally approved list. I stopped doing that and I just said, hey, it's just a meal. I'll be fine with just a meal of eating something, even if I don't normally eat it. And I went to a meal at a friend's house recently, and they had a baguette on the table. And that's kind of one of my early loves. I used to eat like a whole baguette with butter, and so delicious. And this sliced baguette was on the table, and I thought, I'll have a piece. I'll have a piece of baguette. Now, my journey, I've learned I knew this before, by the way, but the baguette, how many calories there are. I don't even know how they get so many calories in a little teeny piece of baguette. It's just like a teeny little piece in my mind. It's like 200 calories. And I am not the girl that eats one piece of baguette. And so I thought, I'll have one piece. I love baguette. It's delicious. And I'm doing my okay, I'm at a meal. It's okay. I'm going to have one. And before I knew it, I'd had 3 pieces of baguette. And as I'm eating, maybe the second piece, but certainly the third piece, I'm noticing a lot of talk in my head, like, what are you doing? Why are you eating this? You don't need this. You're not hungry anymore. This is excessive. And I was like, oh, yeah, no, this is not safe. Now, after the meal, the rest of my day went normally. I didn't have a candy bar, chocolate bar, weird dessert. I didn't have that slide into eating other things. It didn't persist. It was the one meal. Yes, it was 600 or 700 calories of baguette, but not the end of the world. But I didn't like that feeling. It was not an experience I want to be having. It hurt my heart to feel out of control. And I have very strong memories of just crying and crying and crying because I felt out of control about all foods. This was many years ago, right before I started getting better. And I don't love tastes of that. It was like I visited that feeling for a second and I hated it. So, my approach of tolerating wider and wider boundaries is not without pitfalls. I don't think this is a better method for everybody. And, what is the aftermath for me? Well, now I've come back and said, I just don't want to be in the presence of baguette. I don't want one piece because for me, apparently with that food, if I have one piece, I want all the pieces. And that's just good. It's just good for me to remember and realize and say, okay, that's not one of the foods that I'm okay with. Does that mean that I'm back to 0 carbs? I have to go full carnivore. I have to, no. I can't have a piece of fruit now. No, because I've demonstrated over the past few years that I can have a piece of fruit and it's fine. It doesn't affect me and I don't feel nuts. Or I can have, a piece of dessert at Thanksgiving and it's a piece and I don't eat all the desserts and I don't eat the full pie. I would not, though, pick up a whole pie pan. What's a pie pan? Pie pan and start eating it with a fork. I would serve myself a piece and I would eat that piece and I'll be fine. And I don't go back and have another one. I don't take it home with me. I don't have it in the fridge, right? And so there are certain things that I can do and control. And there are certain foods that I'm still that's just a no for me. That food is just going to be a no. And there's not always rhyme or reason about the food. Why would a, dessert be okay? A piece of dessert, but a piece of bread isn't? That is just part of the wonderness of my psyche. And it's not even I can't have a different type of piece of bread, but for some reason a baguette just totally off. And I certainly couldn't have challah. Oof, that would be even worse. I won't tell you what I used to do when I bought challah. Okay, I'm telling you, just eat the center out, just the center part, leaving a shell. It was chaos. Anyway, so yeah. I just want you guys to know, it's not perfection over here. I have slip ups and I think I can handle something sometimes. And then I'm no, that was a bad idea. But what's the difference? What's the difference between that experience and where I used to live? The experience was, it was an experience. It was a meal. It was a moment. It was a day. It wasn't even a whole day. It was part of a day. And at the end of it, I walked away saying, what did I learn here? I don't like the way this feels. I don't like the way I felt mentally. I don't like the way I felt emotionally. I don't want to keep doing that. I don't feel like I need to revisit that again anytime soon, for certain. And that's why it's a win, not a failure. I would not consider that experience a failure. Did I fly a little too close to the sun in that moment? Sure, I got a little scorched. I had a moment that I wasn't happy about. I don't beat myself up about it. I'm not gonna, have constant thoughts about it. I'm not gonna cry over the baguette. I'm gonna say, hey, what did I learn? It's a scary feeling, though. I will admit it. That moment that I got sort of in my head eating that third piece, and I felt that out of controlness again. It's scary for me to feel that, even just a tinge of it, because I remember feeling like totally out of control for, ever. And I don't want to go there again. I don't want to live there. I don't even really want to visit it. And so that's why I feel really happy to say, like, yeah, had that experience, was not pleased with that experience, choose not to repeat that experience. But this isn't the only way to live. Some people, they just know, and they're just like, I'm not even going to flirt with disaster. I'm not even gonna come close and touch it. And for me, I was like, I'm okay touching it. And I touched it and I was like, oh, that was uncomfortable. That was unfortunate. That was something not a good idea. Anyway, I don't know. I might regret this podcast, but I thought I would put it out there that I have moments of, whoa, that was a bad idea, as well. And, they come in all sorts of varieties. And the difference between where I am now and where I used to be is that I'm like, okay, a learning experience, moving on. And I thought, well, I guess I'm kind of doing you guys a disservice if I pretend it's all roses over here every day. And that I never have a moment that I'm like, well, that wasn't the best idea. And moments where I could have made a different choice, and yet I chose not to, even though there were other options. That it's not, I don't always choose the best option, right? That I'm not always a picture of perfection. You guys are listening like, yeah, we knew that already, Kim. But anyway, I just wanted to say, like, I don't feel at risk of falling down a deep, dark hole here. Even though I engaged in a behavior that led to some emotions that I recognize as disordered. And I choose to bring this into the light rather than hide it into the dark, right? Because that is something that addicts do. We hide. We don't want you to know. We don't want anybody to know about what we do behind closed doors where people can't see, because there's so much shame. And I guess I just wanted to put this story out there that I went into an experience, made a conscious decision to do something in front of other people. There were like 8 other people at the dinner table, and didn't do it in a hiding manner. And still, though, felt, oh, I lost control of that. That felt bad to me. Not in a guilty, I shouldn't be eating bread. Bread is the devil kind of way, but in a, I'm not in my best self here in this moment. Not with the first piece, but with the subsequent pieces. But for me, that first piece led to the subsequent pieces, which leads me to the understanding that, yeah, that's just not one of my foods. It's not one of my foods. So, in the whole abstinence struggle situation, we all have a different line we draw. Some people draw it at all carbs. Some people draw it at certain types, like wheat or certain types of carbs. And for me, it's very food specific. And that's just the way that we all have to navigate the world. My approach is not better than somebody else's approach, which is not better than somebody else's approach, except we all have to do the approach that works best for us. Because in the end, what really matters is our health and our sanity. And we have to find the line that works best for ourselves. So I just wanted to put it out there. If some of you think, oh, you really screwed up, you just have to stay away from all those kinds of foods. That's totally right for you to think that for you. And for me, I'm okay. I'm okay that I tried something and I regret it, but I don't regret trying it. So maybe I don't regret it. What is the word I want to use? I tried it. I had an experience. I said, I don't want to have this experience again. And so I will make a different choice next time. And I'm okay with that. So that's where we're at. Anyway, just thought I would share this one. I'm feeling a little nervous about sharing this one because, I'm a hider. I want to look good. I don't want to expose the underbelly, but that's not what I'm here for in the world. Clearly, I'm not here to look good. I'm here to be real with you guys. And so I hope that this was helpful. All right, guys, talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Keto Life Support. Want more information? Want show notes? Want to suggest a topic? Just head over to ketolifesupport.com. That's where all that kind of thing can go on. By the way, I have a request. If you could go to your podcast host and hit subscribe, we would really, really appreciate it. And what would be even more awesome is if you could write a review. And what would be even more awesome than that is if you could write like a really flattering review. Just asking, you do you. All right. So thanks so much for joining us. I'm thrilled that you're part of the Keto fam. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.